Hi everybody, my name is Sheila Landry. I'm an artist, designer, and teacher, and I work in all kinds of mediums. Let's see what we're going to work on today. Today I'm going to show you how I undercoat something to go over a background. And what I am using today is my little Sweet Tweets bird. This is a finished plaque. And I'm going to show you how to paint the tomato pincushion, because when I first painted this, I was just trying it out, and something happened with the photos for the pincushion in my pattern when I was taking them for the pattern. So I thought instead of repainting it and taking photos, I'd do a video and show you how I did it. So that would be even more fun. So I have some other videos on my channel here that showed how I undercoated, how I seal my MDF. I use the same piece, and then I showed you how to do the background in another video. And this video is going to show you how I painted the little tomato pincushion. Now, when you have a background like this, I find it easier to just do the whole background and then layer whatever we're putting on top over it, because going around things is hard to do, especially when there's a lot of little things going on here. And in my patterns, I often talk about undercoating things. And some of you guys don't understand what that is or have asked about it, so I thought I'd do a quick video and show you. This is the pattern for the piece, and like I said, I'm only going to do the pincushion this time. I printed my pattern page on vellum, which is semi-transparent. You can find it at like Staples or any of the stationery stores in the wedding section, and it's a little bit thicker. So you have to keep that in mind, because when you're transferring your pattern, you're going to have to push a little harder because it's kind of plasticky. But what I like about it instead of paper is see how you could see through it. And you could replace your pattern. This is great when you're doing patterns where you do a layer and then you have to replace the pattern and do the next part of the layering, because you can see exactly where it is. So for our purposes, I am just going to fold this over. And I realize this isn't exactly how the pattern is, but I want to show you, you could see through here the floor line where the floor meets the wall, goes right through the tomato. And, you know, that might be a problem for some people. Like I said, you want to have even coverage. You don't want to have problems when you try to paint over something with such a deep contrast like that. So we're going to show you an easy way to do that. So I'm taping my pattern in place where I'd like it. Okay. And then I'm going to put my transfer paper in between, make sure the proper side is down. And I'm going to take my stylus and I'm going to trace over my design. Now you could use a pen or a pencil, you know, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go right over these buttons and things. I'm going to make just the tomato. I'm going to pretend this line goes here, and then I'm going to pretend this line goes here over the bobbin, because later in the pattern you're going to undercoat again to cover the part of the tomato when you put in that piece. You're going to do it exactly the same way. So I want the little top here. We're not going to do the bird. I think that's it, right? Okay, that's good enough. You can see it. Put that aside. And can you see? Yes, you can see it. So you see I have my lines for my pincushion. And I'm going to take a soft brush, and I'm going to use a small one because I want control. So I'm going to use a number 4. And what we're going to do is called undercoating. I call it undercoating in my patterns, for those of you who have my patterns. And as usual, I'm going to wet my brush. And you can see I like to hold it in the water a bit because it's absorbing that water. It takes a minute for it to go all the way. See how it's getting darker? You want to put that barrier of water between your ferrule and your paint. And by wetting the brush, it gives a little bit of a cushion where the paint's not going to get absorbed into your ferrule and wreck your brush. So I'm going to load up my brush, and I'm using what color I used for the background, which is the buttermilk. It could be any neutral color though. It doesn't have to be that, but it's convenient. It's in my palette here. And as you can see when I'm painting, I'm just following the design, and this is all going to be done in buttermilk, and it's going to, you could still see the wall through it, I'll call it the wall line. And I'm going to leave a little space in between these segments, because then I won't have to retransfer things. And for those of you who follow me, I paint a lot of light coats. I never put thick coats of paint on. I go very light. And you kind of want to follow, in general, the direction of the pin cushion or your piece. You're going to follow it. So we want it to curve. See how sheer? You're going to follow the shape. So if you're doing something square, you're going to try to go in one direction. And you're going to go almost up to these edges, right? Could leave a little space. Okay, now I am going to switch for the top to a round brush because I think that'll be easier to do the little green part. And again, I'm going to go almost up to the line where I can still see the line. And I'm just going to put a light coat. Because we want a good base to start, especially with red, because red's tough to cover sometimes. And this will really help things move along. See, the round brush might have worked better for the whole thing, actually. But you could choose whatever you're more comfortable. You know, one thing I found out with painting, see, this is almost dry, so I'm going to go over again. Just for the heck of it, minus the hair. And what this does when you go in the right direction is, even though it might look a little streaky, it's going to give you a little bit of texture and shape. So it'll make your painting look a little bit deeper and less cartoony. You know, it doesn't need to be all flat. It doesn't need to all fill in completely. Because really, in nature, nothing's like that. And see how much better it covered on the second coat. The top needs hardly anything. And I'll bring it up for you. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to let that dry a minute, okay? And then I will be right back. Okay, I hit that with the hairdryer, and I think I'm going to do one more coat just to be sure, because we are going to paint red, I probably won't coat the top part. But the bottom, I will do a third coat. Again, they're thin coats. But they will make a big difference when we're painting. They're going to make it a lot easier for us to deal with everything. And the same thing will happen, like I said, when you add the other pieces over this, like the little bobbin that goes on top of this, you're going to be painting over the red part of the pincushion, because you want that bobbin to be, you won't want to see the pincushion through the bobbin because it's colored, right? And I want to use a soft brush because then you get less brush strokes. So for this step, you don't need a lot of control. You know, you're just going kind of to the ends. So having a soft brush and light pressure keeps things nice. Okay, so we'll let that dry. And I'm following my own instructions here. And while that's drying, I'm going to do the top part. And that's done in Festive Green. I'm using DecoArt paint, DecoArt Americanas. But all my patterns have spot charts in them that show what each color is that I'm using. So if you have a different brand, you can use whatever brand you want. And something like this, as long as it's a medium bright green, that's fine. You know, most of the stuff I'm painting is cartoony, so it's gonna, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a shade or two off. Now see, the first coat here is not going to cover well. It's all about the layers. A little bit of patience, but you still want to go, especially for these first coats, you want to go in the proper direction. You don't want to just helter-skelter all over the place. You want to keep it where it's going with the flow, so to speak. And don't overwork it because you're going to start to pull that up. Okay? So that's fine for the first coat of the green. And then the tomato itself is base coated in scarlet, which is like an orangey red. Again, this is DecoArt paint. And I am going to use my flat brush, I think, for this. This is a number 4. I'm using silver golden brushes on here. Now look how rich and bright that looks. Even though this is the first coat. This is exactly what we wanted it to look like. Now, if I would have undercoated it, you would have seen that line through it, and it certainly wouldn't have come out as nice and bright as it is right now. So you're going to carefully do each section, and I'm still leaving a little space there. Just because it's going to be shaded in later, so it doesn't matter. And it helps you kind of keep an eye on where you want your things to, your lines to be, your divisions here. I need some more water. You don't want it too watery, but you want your paint to be able to move, right? If you find it's not covering, you might be adding a little too much water, but you might just need a couple coats. See, and when it starts to pull off like that, you know to back off and let it dry. Don't keep futzing with it because you're going to wind up making it a mess. Don't be afraid to go back for another coat. There's no rules that you have to have everything done at once. And, you know, in all likelihood, it's not going to look very even in the beginning. Sorry, my camera shut off. I heard it go. But I'm almost done here anyway, and then I'm going to give it time to dry. So there is your first coat of scarlet. Okay, so see, it's not real even, but it looks pretty decent. So we're going to let that dry and come back again. Okay, the first coat dried. I'm bringing it up a little bit so you could see. And I'm going to put the second coat on. And I know this isn't really exciting, but I figure you want to see the difference. So I'm going to start with the green. This is festive green again. And now we're really going to see it starting to cover. Certainly enough for our purposes because we have layers to put on top of it. So we're going to go over the green. You could use a smaller brush if you have to. I'm just kind of winging it. We're just blocking things in right now. I'm going to switch to my flat brush. And I'm going to do the red, one more coat, the scarlet, which is like an orangey red. And you could really see the difference, I hope, in that. You're getting a lot of nice color there. And all of a sudden it comes together and looks nice and even. Now you could still see just a touch of the background. I can, I don't know if you can. But we're going to be putting some more layers on it. And those are going to disappear. There's going to be all sorts of stuff going on here. By the time we're done, you will not see it. So don't worry. But see, this is nice and stress-free. If you try to do it all at once, you're more likely to make errors. You could even it out at the bottom there. There you go. You don't even have to skip your in-between anymore because you could see, because we skipped them before, they're still visible, right? And these little smudges, you could go over them with the base coat, but we're going to be putting a shadow there later anyway, so it's not going to matter. So that's at that point right now, and we're going to once again let this dry before we move on to our next step. Okay, everything is dry, and the next step that I call for is to do some highlighting. I want to highlight before I shade, and then I can add more highlights after, if that makes sense, because again, it's all about layers. I'm going to highlight with saffron yellow, which is a very intense yellow, but it's somewhat transparent, so it's still going to let the colors show through. And I'm going to dry brush these highlights with a dome blender, which this one's almost, you could see they wear down, but it's still good. The dome blenders are almost like Deerfoot's, except the edges of the bristles are rounded a little, which I like better because it doesn't leave a hard edge. And I'm not going to wet my brush with that. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the saffron yellow paint, and I'm going to scrub it off on my paper towel till it's almost dry. And I'm going to start in the center of the sections and highlight them. So I'm going to go in the center here. It's going to look like a yellow tomato, like it's not quite ripe yet. I'm going to need more paint there, and I'm going to try to keep it away from the crease area, the divisions, and into the center of the sections. And then I also am going to put that color on the top center of the green, because there's going to be a highlight there, even though the little bird's sitting on top of him. We're going to pretend we're just doing the pincushion for now. Okay, so that's about all. It doesn't look like much, but you can see there's highlights there. We'll finish it up later. We're not going to rinse our brush. Then I'm going to use an angle shader, and I'm going to shade the tomato with Heritage Brick, which is a darker maroony type red. Okay. And the top of the pincushion is going to be Black Forest Green, a very dark green. And I'm going to do the floating with an angle like I did for the division here. Wet my brush, of course. Get a clean piece of paper towel to blot it on. You don't want to pick up old paint. Dip the corner in. And make sure there's enough water for it to move. And I'm going to start maybe at a section here and start to shade it. Now look how nice that shades the red and the orange, the scarlet. And we're going to work our way around. And as I said when I did the other shading, we want to follow this shape. We want to go perpendicular to where we're at, where we're shading. You can see how that brings it to life, the intensity. And the reason I'm starting at the bottom of the sections is that the shadows are mostly on the bottom. Now see, if you get a chunky like that, you could just dip in water. Don't put too much like I did. And blot it on the towel, and then move the paint with the water. Okay? It's all a back and forth type of motion again. This is where you can clean up your edges. Note I'm staying perpendicular. I'm going to do the bottom first, I think. I'll do this section too first. And again, when I float shade, I use little strokes. It's just the way I do it. Okay, sorry, I'm getting hiccups with my camera and I don't know why. So, anyway, instead of being completely perpendicular, why I like an angle or two is I could start by almost using the edge as a liner on these thin parts. And then as I come around the end, I turn the brush. So you see I started like that, where I'm almost lining it with the front of the brush, with the tip. And then I'm bringing it around. Need more paint. And then I'm going to pull that line into the other ones. Okay, so that's the edges. And yes, it's a little dark because I am on camera and trying to do it like this for the first time. But it just looks weird now because everything's not in it. So then instead of doing near the edges where I'm going to pull off the paint, I'm going to start in the middle and do underneath where the green top meets the tomato. Okay, so I want to skip around so I'm not pulling off paint that I just put on. Because that green top piece is casting a little bit of a shadow on the tomato. Okay? You're starting in your corners because it's darker in the corners and kind of tapering it out for the edges. And then this we can just blend in. Okay? So instead of doing the line, since that's all wet, I am going to get my green, and I will be right back because it's not on my table, and I'm going to do the top until it dries. So hang on there. Okay. It was under a paper in my basket. So this is black forest green. It's a very dark green. And I'm going to do the same thing on the top. I'm using my angler, and I'm just going to mainly go around the edges and pull these corners out. Don't forget, if you're doing this design, the bird is going to sit on top, but you know, we like to do everything neat and pretend that it's going to be a standalone piece. There you go. There's a little ouchie. There. Okay, so as you see, I'm pulling from the corners, which are going to be the darker part, out. And then I'm going to blend everything. I don't know why I'm making a mess on this corner. There we go. And then one more for the piece in the back on the top. Okay, so by the time the green is done, we can go back to the red, the shading on the bottom. And since this is the main piece, I'm going to shade to both sides of that. So I'm going to shade to this section, towards this section, right? Then I'm going to take that and shade, whoops, towards the outside. I want to get rid of this little thing here before it dries. And then I'll turn my piece upside down. And I'm going to shade towards the outside here. So I'm not shading towards that at all. Okay. Now see how much dimension that has? We need to let this dry, and then I will go to the final steps on it. Okay, I'm almost done with the tomato. The last step is to take True Red, because this is still quite orangey. And True Red, like any red, is not a totally opaque color. It's kind of semi-transparent. And I'm going to just use my angle brush and take some water with it. A little bit thinned, inky consistency. And I'm going to tone it. And you could see the difference? I'm kind of creating a wash with it. And it's giving it a nice richness of color. See the difference? It looks a little chalky here, but it looks really nice and red here. Now you could pull some off if you want a little bit of highlight more. You want a little bit of your yellow to show through. Go section by section, because then it's not too intimidating, I guess. And like, see how that looks a little bit messy? Well, once we bring that red in, the true red, what it does is it's going to marry those colors. And see, you're still seeing all your shading, and you still see even your highlights. But it gives it like continuity and depth. You get a good richness from this. If you want, you can, go deeper in the creases. This is where you kind of have fun. You go deeper on the bottom section maybe, because there's shadows there. And it gives you a full range of depth on your piece. Okay, so that's about it. The rest is pretty much, it's all explained in the pattern. As I said, when we put this piece in, once again, you trace it in, and I'll be undercoating it with buttermilk again over the red. But see, if you would have had a stop here when you were creating this section, you would have seen the stop mark. It's just not as easy to do. It's easier to do the whole thing, and then if you're painting over it, like with the little buttons and things like that, add them in later and undercoat them. Okay? So that is about it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you did. Let me know again if you want any other techniques. I'll be happy to do videos. I've really made it a priority to do some more videos this year. I know I've had a slow start, but I feel like I'm ready to work with them. So the more response I get from you guys, the more encouraged I am to do some videos. I hope you enjoyed this. The patterns are available at my scroll saw or toepaintingdesign.com site. This is the wren, and this one is the chickadee, and this is the little bluebird. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one. Well, I hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and you'll be notified when I post new content. Thanks for stopping by.